본회의는 통일부와 국민의힘 태영호 국회의원님의 공동 주최로
데이비드 알톤의 첫 번째 메시지가 발표된 세미나 현장입니다. 환영사를 전한 권영세 통일부 장관은 북한 인권 개선 문제에 대한 현 정부의 관심과 노력이 지대하다고 강조했습니다.
윤석열 정부는 북한 인권 문제를 북한의 비핵화만큼이나 중요한 문제로 인식하고 북한 인권을 실질적으로 개선하기 위해 국제사회와 함께 끊임없이 노력해 나갈 것입니다. 북한 당국과 대화의 문을 열어갈 것이며 국제기구를 통한 협력의 길을 찾고 북한 주민들의 눈과 귀를 여는 소식의 창을 포기하지 않고 두드리겠습니다. 무엇보다 북한의 인권 현실을 국내외에 정확하게 알리는 일부터 확대할 계획입니다. 탈북민을 통해 북한의 인권 현실을 증언하고
논의는 이정훈 연세대 국제대학원장의 사회로 진행됐습니다. 북한 인권 국제협력대사를 지낸 그는 알통과의 오래전 인연을 소개합니다.
그러니까 아주 다방면으로 인권 분야에 있어서는 그 활동이 아주 제가 봤을 때는 영국 의회에서 가장 활발하신 분이 아닌가. 또 개인적으로는 제가 2016년에 그 현인 그룹, 북한 인권 현인 그룹, 그러니까 SAGES Group for North Korean Human Rights라 해서 이런 알통경과 같은 분들, 또 마이클 커비, 말수키 다르즈만, 로버트 킹, 국내에서는 이제 송상현 그 국제형사재판소 소장님도 계십니다. 이런 현인 그룹을 창설을 했습니다. 20여 년 동안 이렇게 북한 인권에 대해서 강한 그 의지를 굽히지 않고 지금까지도 이렇게 활발하게 그 활동을 해주시는 알통경에게 여러분들 그 아주 뜨거운 박수 보내주시기 감사합니다.
Professor Lee, distinguished guests, Your Excellency the Ambassador, Your Honour the Minister, and members of the National Assembly, and many of you who are activists in the field of human rights, first of all, thank you so much for the warmth of your welcome. It's a great pleasure, but it's an honour as well for me to be in Seoul again. As we had our ceremony at the very outset, as hands were placed on our hearts, I can say in my heart are the people of Korea. And although my country, of course, our country, has a great affinity with you, not least because of the 1,000 British servicemen who died during the Korean War as you, in your millions, were slaughtered fighting for the liberties and freedoms and the human rights that you enjoy in the Republic of Korea. And I can say to you that as recently as last month, I met your ambassador in London, and our parliamentary group, as you say, is bipartisan and bicameral. We sat with him and talked about the many issues that unite our two nations, and it's given me great joy to see how deep those relationships have become. And for me, to be here again in Seoul is a great honour. I was also, in my heart, thinking as I left Parliament, just 24 hours ago, I left as a remarkable man was arriving, and that is President Zelensky of Ukraine. And he'd come to address both houses of Parliament, Lords and Commons, in Westminster Hall, where, as a boy, when I was just a child at school, I went with my school to walk past the coffin of Winston Churchill. And many people compare President Zelensky with Winston Churchill and compare the struggle that is taking place in Ukraine today with the struggle that we had against Nazism. I went to Ukraine before the fall of communism. I met some of those who had suffered so grievously under communism. I was not at all surprised to see the bravery and the heroism of Ukrainian people as they now fight, literally fight, dying in their thousands, to retain the liberties and freedoms and the sovereignty they enjoy. And for me, human rights, therefore, is also about security. It is why the two run hand in hand, and why I congratulate your government in elevating again the issue of human rights, something.
데이비드 알톤은 지구촌 곳곳에서 일어나는 소수민족 박해 문제를 누구보다 앞장서서 공론화하는 정치인이자 인권운동가입니다. 북한 인권에 대해서는 영국뿐 아니라 한국에서조차도 그만큼 관심을 기울이는 전문가가 많지 않습니다.
In the Republic of Korea, and it is good for me to be with you again today. This year, of course, is 75 years since, at the end of the Second World War, in 1948, when the world was trying to come to terms with monstrous atrocities which had seen their culmination in the Holocaust, with the murder of some 6 million Jews and other minorities whose only crime was to be different. It was at that moment that the world decided that it would try to ensure that that would never happen again. Sadly, as we've seen so often, never again has happened all over again. That period, 1948, saw a new word enter the English language. It was crafted by a lawyer who had seen more than 40 members of his own family who had been murdered in the Holocaust. The word was genocide, genus and side, from the Greek and the Latin meaning the family being cut, the family being cut, the genocide of the Jews, the Holocaust being the most appalling example in the history of mankind. Raphael Lemkin, that Jewish lawyer who'd seen so many of his own family die, insisted, and these are his words, that if persecution of any minority by any country is tolerated anywhere, the very moral and legal foundations of constitutional government may be shaken. That is why human rights matters. It's why it mattered to him. It's why it mattered to those who crafted the Genocide Convention, into which he'd put so much of his energy in 1948. While he was drafting the convention on the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide, it was seen as a way to ensure that the world would never again witness atrocities like those committed by the Nazis. However, while the immense scale of the loss of life seen during the Second World War has arguably not been matched since, acts of genocide and atrocity crimes have continued to be perpetrated. Since that war, we've witnessed genocide in Cambodia, in Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, northern Iraq, and now in China, Burma, Nigeria, and Tigray, and early signs of genocidal crimes and certainly war crimes in Ukraine. The charity Open Doors has again listed North Korea in 2023 for the 19th time in 20 years as the state in which worldwide throughout the whole world, Christians face the greatest level of persecution. So in the face of all of this, we've got to do more than make weak tea statements of concern. The UK and are okay with other democratic nations that believe in the rule of law and the upholding of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Genocide Convention have got to create an international coalition to keep these issues in the public eye. It's why conferences like this are so important, and examine whether, for instance, deliberate elimination of religious belief in the DPRK may indeed constitute genocide. We've got to restore a twin-track approach of security-related issues alongside human rights questions, which I've often called Helsinki, thinking back to the way that liberal democracies defeated Soviet communism, but Helsinki with a Korean face. And it should be in line with what the United Nations declares as our duty, our responsibility to act. We've got to call out gross violations against North Koreans and against persons from other jurisdictions, including this one in indeed Japan. We've got to call out forced abductions, but repatriation to China as well. And we've got to continue to try and break the information blockade. And here I pay tribute to the UK government and the BBC for launching in 2003 broadcasts to the Korean Peninsula. This came as a result of a campaign that was led by the all-party parliamentary group in Parliament. But as recently as only last week, I had to go and see a United Kingdom minister in the Foreign Office to complain about the proposed short-sighted reductions to the Korean service. And I register that today, knowing that His Excellency, our ambassador, is here, and I hope that that will be communicated back to our government. And I can say that as a result of the meeting only last week, I've now, within the last 24 hours, heard from the BBC seeking a meeting in Parliament, which we're holding just 2 weeks from now. So I don't want to see the BBC's excellent service to the Korean Peninsula that we fought for in 2003 and established being in any way diminished, because breaking the information blockade is crucial, not just to Article 19 of the UDHR, but also to the elevation of human rights. And we must demand accountability. That can be through new mechanisms that are not dependent on the Security Council, and accountability should be linked to things like the Magnitsky sanctions, which His Excellency, our ambassador, referred to earlier on. This is a new tool that is being used by the United Kingdom government in order to hold specifically named individuals to account. And I can tell you that, again, as recently as a week ago, our all-party parliamentary group wrote to the British government suggesting some of those in North Korea who should be sanctioned under Magnitsky sanctions. In other words, the perpetrators and those responsible, not sanctions on the North Korean people, just which can be indiscriminate, but specifically targeted more at those responsible individually. That's what the Genocide Convention, never again, was supposed to be all about. That's what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights demands. The UN Commission of Inquiry demands this too. The paths to justice in North Korea may be circuitous, but countries that say they believe in the rule of law must demonstrate to authoritarian dictatorships that we mean what we say. Let me end where I began, with the Holocaust. On the 27th of January 1945, the Auschwitz concentration camp was liberated. As a young boy, Judge Thomas Bergenthal was incarcerated in Auschwitz. He survived. He went on to become one of the great lawyers in the United States. Judge Bergenthal throws down this challenge to us. I want to end with his words. The human mind is simply not able to grasp this terrible truth. A nation transformed into a killing machine programmed to destroy millions of innocent human beings for no reason other than they were different. If we humans can so easily wash the blood of our fellow humans off our hands, then what hope is there for sparing future generations from a repeat of the genocides and the mass killings of the past? One cannot hope to protect mankind from crimes such as those that were visited upon us unless one struggles to break the cycle of hatred and violence that invariably leads to ever more suffering of human beings. Professor Lee, distinguished guests, in your generation, we must rise to that challenge. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this conference today.